There you go.
This meeting is being recorded.
Oh, that was interesting. Hi, folks. Welcome. Thank you for joining us tonight. I'm Nancy Manning, and this is Gabby Lichtenstein. And here's what we're going to be doing tonight. And we'll try to do it quickly. This is the overview, the agenda that we're going to be following. And we wanted to draw your attention to the fact that there will be a question and answer period towards the end. And I understand that we might be lucky that Amanda Garcia, Senior Attorney for Southern Environmental Law Center, will join us and be available to answer some of your questions. So let's get going, Gabby.
Thanks, Nancy, and it's really good to be here with y'all tonight. Gabby, I'm the Tennessee Energy Democracy Field Coordinator with Appalachian Voices, a bit of a mouthful, but I've been working with folks impacted by this proposed Ridgeline pipeline and also TVA gas plant for the past a little over 2 years now. So that's a big part of the work I do at Appalachian Voices, and I'm going to start out just by giving an overview of sort of what's happening, what is it, what is this, and also how would it impact us here locally in Tennessee, and especially in the counties and nearby counties along the route. So to kick us off, the Ridgeline pipeline, wanted to frame it up. Its purpose would be to supply gas to a proposed TVA power plant near Kingston, Tennessee. So this is part of the retirement and replacement of the coal-fired Kingston fossil plant, and is part of TVA's plan to replace that plant with gas. So that's its purpose. If TVA went another route for producing that electricity, this pipeline could theoretically go away. And there are other options, of course, for producing electricity. So by law, TVA did have to consider other alternatives to, we know their preferred option is to replace the coal plant with a gas plant, on the same site, and also this 122-mile Ridgeline pipeline. But they did consider solar and storage as a replacement option. Gave a lot less details about that one, but it would have been 15 or more sites focused in East Tennessee. And I want to step back a minute just because I don't think we can talk about the Kingston plant's retirement without talking about the coal ash spill. Is anyone here from Roane County or familiar with the spill? Yeah, some folks. So as many of y'all may know, in 2008, a dike containing coal ash from the Kingston plant ruptured, releasing over 1 billion gallons of coal ash slurry into neighborhoods and rivers with a force that knocked homes off of their foundations. And it remains the largest industrial spill in US history, though outside of the region, it's pretty under-recognized. But the spill was 10 times the size of the Deepwater Horizon oil spill. And around 900 workers spent 6 years cleaning it up without protection. The private cleanup contractor actually forbade them from using masks or other personal protective equipment. And since then, hundreds of the cleanup workers have come forward with illnesses. Over 60 have died. TVA also raised an affected neighborhood and replaced it with a park. So this is all part of what they call the Kingston Reservation now. And that's, again, where they'd site this gas plant. So this is where they want to put this new gas plant, polluting the same community that has not only suffered this disaster, but also around 70 years of pollution from the coal plant. So this is an issue of environmental injustice. But TVA is not in the business of building or operating pipelines, so they contract with different pipeline companies for that part. In this case, it's the corporation called Enbridge Inc., a Canadian corporation. And the Ridgeline pipeline, which would supply gas to this new plant, would be 122 miles long, as I've mentioned, stretching across 8 rural Tennessee counties. Trousdale, Smith, Jackson, Putnam, Overton, Fentress, Morgan, and a little bit into Roan. You can see an interactive approximated map of the route on Google. If you go to this link, bit.ly dash TVA pipeline. So that's a good way to like zoom in real close to the route if you want to get a better sense of the areas it would go through. And I also want to underscore that this project is part of a much larger gas build-out and coal to gas swap that TVA is advancing. In fact, their proposed gas build-out is the largest of any utility this decade, with 8 gas plants, and 3 pipelines proposed, built, or planned in the last 3 years. So that's really massive, the largest this decade of any utility. And the Southeast in particular is getting hit hard by these gas plans. Duke Energy also has a lot of plans to build out gas. But today, only 4% of TVA's power comes from wind and solar. You can see the largest chunk is nuclear. There's still about 15% coal, but they're shuttering all their coal plants throughout the region. And a lot of that they want to replace with gas. And TVA is a federal utility, but these plans are far out of line with executive orders for a carbon-free power sector by 2035. And we often hear some misinformation about gas in relation to this build out. Gas is not a bridge fuel, it's not a clean energy source. And I know this chart is sort of hard to read, but studies are finding that even very low rates of methane leakage from gas infrastructure can make it far worse for the climate than coal. And so this study at the top found that a leakage rate of 0.2% would put gas on par with the climate impact of coal. But all these studies underneath it, they found rates of 1.2 to 11% of leakage. And this leakage can happen at a lot of different points throughout the fracking or, transportation cycle. There's intentional flaring of gas, there's accidental leakages, then explosions and things like that. So it can vary widely, but again, I think when people are calling gas cleaner energy, we really have to look at the research and, bring it to bear in this conversation. And of course, there are options with zero air pollutants that exist right now and are ready to go. TVA's own analysis of their plan for Kingston found that the gas plant would release over 1.6 million tons of air pollutants every year, and their solar and storage option would have no air pollutants. So again, they'd be choosing to sort of subject this community to yet more pollution when they have another option available. And while TVA is claiming that gas is cheaper, economists and the EPA agree that a gas replacement would cost over $1 billion more than clean energy options. And I've posted some of the studies in here, happy to follow up with them after. But of course, these costs are passed on to ratepayers via our electric bills. So they could be locking us into higher energy bills for decades to come. And their whole analysis about this plan was so flawed that the EPA said that they didn't even meet legal requirements, and they called on them to produce sort of a supplemental study, which they have yet to do. But there are some serious issues about cost, about climate, with the study that TVA is sort of basing this plan on. So I'm going to hone in on the pipeline now. I know that's probably what many folks are here for. So just to give some more information about that. Enbridge has found that the majority of communities on the pipeline route, or 59% of census block groups, are environmental justice communities where a high percentage of residents relative to the county's average are low income and or people of color. And this pipeline, another thing to know about Ridgeline is this pipeline would largely be located adjacent to an existing pipeline from the late 40s, early 50s that Enbridge now owns. And so there's some existing easements. There's a lot of existing easements for along this route. And so Enbridge is telling these same environmental justice communities that they have to pay to move things like their own chicken coops, garages, and sheds from this existing right-of-way back from the 40s and 50s, when most of these folks weren't even there. And I've heard a lot of really alarming stories about how Enbridge reps are talking to these people. Now, I'm going to spend a bit of time on the water impacts. I know this issue is really important to a lot of people on this call. And this pipeline would cross Tennessee waterways over 400 times, but there are over 700 crossings in total. So let me explain. This chart may look a little wonky, but what it's showing is that 390 of these crossings, which are actual, where the pipeline would be crossing through a waterway, where they're constructing a pipeline through a waterway. So 390 of these would use methods that require temporary dams, trenching, and sometimes explosives to blast through the waterways. Dam and pump or flume dry crossing is what I'm referring to here. Another set of crossings would not be the pipeline itself, but would be from permanent or temporary access roads. So those are included in the total number of crossings that Enbridge provides. And another big chunk, 275, are within workplaces, but not actually crossed by the pipeline, but would be impacted in other ways. So that brings the total to 707. So that's another reason why you may see different numbers in different places. Sometimes use the over 400 number because that's actual pipeline crossings of the waterways, but that's not the total. That's not the total when we're talking about impacts. And for a 28-mile stretch, the majority of these crossings either directly or indirectly contribute flow to the Obed, Wild, and Scenic river segments. There are 77 pipeline crossings within the Obed watershed, and 19 of them are of direct tributaries. I pulled an excerpt of this chart from FERC's study, which goes through the Obed tributaries that are crossed by the pipeline. It was too long to include the full chart, but again, I'm happy to send the link to this full study or this chart that talks specifically about these crossings because there's a lot of them. And I added this one that I'm pointing to with an arrow. I want to call a bit more attention to this crossing of the Emery in Morgan County, because it's not only an Obed tributary, but it's part of the National Rivers Inventory, and it's also federally designated critical habitat for the threatened spotfin chub and proposed critical habitat for the threatened sickle darter. Now, get this, they were surveying at this crossing for those fish because of the critical habitat designations, and they found 5 Alabama lamp mussels during their survey. So that's a very endangered, I've heard it called the rarest mussel in North America. And they've also found the endangered Tennessee bean, another freshwater mussel, just upstream of this crossing. And y'all, the Alabama lamp mussel is found only in 3 other rivers in the world, and none were thought to remain in Tennessee until they were discovered in the Emery in 2010. So right now, Enbridge still plans to cross this site using more destructive dry crossing methods compared to some others, and this is not acceptable. And so when I'm talking about the endangered or threatened species that were found likely to be adversely affected by the pipeline, that's through what's called the biological assessment, a formal process for assessing project risk to species or critical habitat. But there's a lot of other endangered and threatened species found, within the areas that the pipeline would be crossing. And you may be wondering what the impacts can be of these pipeline crossings. So sedimentation is a type of water pollution that often looks like muddy water to the eye. And it's a known impact of pipeline construction, even when best practices are used. It can have long-term effects on waterways, ranging from harm to aquatic life, risks to drinking water safety, etc. And so this photo here shows a tributary post-pipeline construction documented by volunteers who were following the Mountain Valley pipeline construction. So you can see it looks like muddy water. Y'all probably have a lot more expertise around this stuff than I do. But there's also risks of spills during construction, like of diesel or drilling fluid, and these things happen all over the country. These are just two examples, though, a little bit more local. And these risks of spills during construction are exacerbated in karst terrain like that of Middle and East Tennessee, or rather the impacts of them are exacerbated in karst terrain, where sinkholes and caves are common, because this can cause contaminants to spread much more quickly. So there's much more to say, but I'm going to pass it over to Nancy for now to talk a bit more about Enbridge, the company that would be building this thing.
All right. Enbridge's natural gas network moves about 20% of all gas consumed in the United States. Their LNG pipelines cover about 71,308 miles in 31 US states alone. They stretch from the far northeast corner of British Columbia to the southern tip of Texas, across to Florida, and up into New England and the Atlantic provinces. Now they have various systems for these pipelines, and on the screen you see what's called on their website the East Tennessee system. In your chat box, I put one link to an Enbridge page, and what you're going to see is all 9 of their systems across the United States for this, what they call liquefied natural gas. Now, natural gas is just the shiny word for methane, folks. It's the word they want to use in the industry to make it not sound so bad. The pipelines do leak methane, which releases pollutants such as carbon dioxide, nitrogen oxides, and volatile organic compounds such as benzene and formaldehyde. These pollutants can cause various health issues, including anemia, immune system diseases, cancer, and respiratory problems. And sometimes pipelines explode. So this explosion you're seeing on your screen was of a natural gas pipeline caused allegedly by defects in the welding, and this happened in Kentucky. But many of the folks living in Kentucky at or near the site of this explosion said they didn't even know there was a pipeline underneath them. Leaks, spills, and explosions can be caused by a number of things like that welding issue in Kentucky, or even the age and corrosion of pipelines, such as happened in Michigan. And we have 2 people on this call, this Zoom session, that were actually in Michigan when a spill of an Enbridge pipeline occurred. And they lived about 15 minutes from that spill, but that spill was preceded by 15,000 complaints lodged with Enbridge, and Enbridge ignored them all, and the result was the leakage of 100 million gallons of oil. So that was a crude oil spill. But as this USA Today headline states, Enbridge has a history of incidents and spills at both their LNG pipelines and their crude oil pipelines. There's a website called Pipeline Safety Trust, and that website was the result of an explosion of a gas pipeline in Washington where 3 children were killed. And when that matter was ultimately decided, the judge provided that $4 million of that award or settlement would go to establish this organization. And you can see the results on their website, Pipeline Safety Trust. That website dedicates an entire section of their website to Enbridge and its failures. The incidents and spills listed there appear to be of their crude oil pipelines, but they highlight Enbridge's dismal safety history. The website includes maps that give you a great sense of the spiderweb of their pipelines across the country. I will put a link in the chat in just a few minutes so that you can get a good look at some of those reports of incidents and spills and leakage. Now, as Gabby pointed out, and some folks do say that, well, there's a gas pipeline already where Enbridge is, the new Ridgeline pipeline would be sited alongside. But that gas pipeline has already exploded twice in Smith County as recently as 2018. So now, Gabby, tell us how we can all take some action.
All right. So before the Q&A, we're gonna give a tutorial on how to take action with FERC, which is the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission. I should have explained that acronym earlier, but they are one of the primary decision makers for this project, that sort of direct authority on whether it gets built. TVA, of course, also a primary decision maker. They decide what to replace the Kingston plant with, and the TVA board could stop Ridgeline and the gas build out in its tracks. The Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, or FERC, regulates the pipeline, and they are also the entity that gives Enbridge the power of eminent domain if they approve it. So Enbridge is sort of working its way through this process now, and we're at a key period where FERC is seeking comments and also accepts something called motions to intervene. And that deadline ends July 15th at 5 p.m. Eastern. So focusing on them today because that period is open. There's also other permitting agencies, the Army Corps of Engineers, and the Tennessee Department of Environment and Conservation, TDEC. That's one that's going to have some things coming up pretty soon, we think. So we'll have more to share on that when it's time, and likely some public hearings that folks can attend. But FERC, there's a number of different ways to take action with FERC. We're gonna focus mostly on level 2 tonight, but Appalachian Voices has a petition right now that you can access at bit.ly/Ridgeline petition. You can add your name, you can add a comment to that too. Encourage y'all to sign it, to share with your friends, share widely. Again, we'll be taking signers until the morning of July 15th, but the sooner you get them in, the better. Level 2, I would say, is a level up, but still, it's not too complicated. They just make their website really confusing. Is you can submit a comment online through FERC's docket. So this is a little different because it appears as like a notification to the pipeline company and FERC, and it's sort of more easily accessible in this public record after you make your comment there. So we're going to focus on that one. But level 3, I would say, is intervening. And I'll explain a little bit more about this, but I can send you a PDF guide on how to do it if you're interested. So I'll share my email at the end, or you can put it in the chat if you want to learn more about this. But what's the difference between comments and intervention? As I mentioned, comments really help establish a public record of concerns about the project. So they're a really good option for anyone who wants to get involved or tell decision makers how they feel. It's a little less involved than intervening. You can do it pretty simply on the website, and you're done. Intervention is really aimed at preserving your right to take legal action against FERC's decision. So if they were to approve the pipeline and you want to challenge this legally, you could do it. You have to intervene to preserve that right. It does not bind you to taking any sort of legal action, but it keeps that option open. And if you don't do it in this window, you may not be able to at all. It's a good option, or it's something important to consider for landowners who may want to, who are on the pipeline route and may want to preserve their right to protect their personal property interests. It's also can be a good option for environmental organizations whose areas of work could be affected by this. So watershed associations, TCWP could intervene, and those with other like strong ties to the impacted area. Maybe your business is in the route. Maybe you own a kayaking company that uses some of the waterways that would be impacted. So that's like an especially good option for those people. Environmentalists can intervene as individuals as well, but yeah, so if you feel really called to do that as an individual, let me know, but also happy to help organizations do so. And again, can send you a PDF guide. It's really pretty simple. They just make it really complicated to navigate their website. So most of the tutorial is just how do you use FERC's website? And this shows strong opposition to the pipeline. So comments. Well, we've gotten so many great ones and so many really powerful, heartfelt comments from folks in the impacted areas already throughout this process. I will say that as of pretty recently, we've had an influx of a lot of pro-pipeline comments, seem to be drawing from the same template, local electeds and people in other positions of power have been submitting comments in support of the pipeline. So it would be so powerful to see people with concerns also using this docket right now. And so I just wanted to sort of flag that as well. For comments, it's good to talk about how long you've lived here, worked here, recreated here, whatever your connection is to the impacted area, and how it would affect, your household, your land, your livelihood, or your community. It could be electric bill rates. It could be, you use the waterways a lot. You hike around here. You work to protect these areas. Anything like that. And if you're a subject matter expert, it is helpful to note your professional credentials, years of experience, and connections to the area. Of course, why this land is special and deserves protection. So these are things to consider, but don't let them be a barrier. I would say that just a simple comment that says, hey, I live here and I don't want this pipeline. That's better than nothing. And there's no limit to how many you can submit. So if you want to submit a brief one tonight and a little bit more detailed one later on, you could do that. And again, it's really best if you submit it by this deadline, it sort of guarantees FERC will consider it or review it. But you can submit them after the deadline too. So again, you can submit one now. Maybe you learn more about the pipeline later on and you submit a detailed one after the deadline if you want to like really dig into stuff. So just wanted to sort of frame up all that. Now I'm sort of just going to really briefly walk through what this looks like as you're going through it. I can put this link in the chat. I'll put it in right now. Sorry, it's going to mess up the screen share, but I know it's a weird link. We also have a PDF guide that I will upload after we're done presenting that basically explains the process. You can also submit comments by mail, but since we're all on Zoom, I'm just going to be talking about the online version tonight. Basically, you go to that website, you're just going to fill out the fields that it asks for. Only your name and city will be publicly available, but and the content and your comment, of course, when you make that. So you fill out the CAPTCHA and authorize it. And then you're going to get a link to your email to complete the process. One of the things it asks you for is your email. So you'll go to your email, you'll click the link. This is what the email should look like for you. And this big long hyperlink here is how you're going to type your comments. And basically, the next step is you're going to search for the docket numbers. And the docket numbers for this project are these, they're CP 23516000, and then there's a second subdocket that ends in 001. So you'll want to search for both of these things at the top here where it says enter docket number. You'll click search. You'll pick the blue plus sign for both of the dockets, and then you'll get this box where you can just type your comment. You'll have 6,000 characters. If you want to write something longer than that, it's a similar process. You're just going to have to make a FERC account first, and then you'll be able to like upload your PDF. But this is the simplest way to make one, and you just click send when you're finished, and that's it. If you want to stay in the loop with FERC and sort of get emails when things come through the docket, this would include things like this study that we're talking about, FERC's draft environmental impact statement, which is what opened this comment period. If you want to get emails when people submit comments like this, when Enbridge uploads things, you'll also want to subscribe to the docket. And I know this isn't a lot of other sort of wonky links, but basically you're going to register for a user account if you don't have one, and you'll sign up for subscriptions. You'll add a new subscription, and you can then enter the docket number and add it. But I will upload the PDF that walks you through the comment process in a moment. So that is all I have. Thank you so much. My email is here. It's gabby@appvoices.org, and Nancy's is here too. And
Yeah,
then
I would just like to add one more thing to the chat, and we have much of what Gabby just did with screenshots on a blog on our website. So I'm going to put that in your chat also.
And I think we're ready to transition to questions.
All right, go for it, Keith.
Hi, this is Keith Havens and Sue.
Hi.
We have some comments more than questions. We've already done the online comment.
Both of us.
Both of us have sent that in. And we've talked to the Sierra Club about being interveners. However, we've tried multiple times on the FERC website to become interveners using the Sierra Club's instructions, and we have not been successful on getting onto it via the FERC website. So we will try again once we get your information, Gabby, and see if we can get on.
Right. And Gabby, if you could maybe send that PDF, maybe there's something that the Sierra Club missed in their PDF.
But I just think the FERC website is just bad.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, sorry.
Sorry?
Oh, Keith,
Yes, ma'am.
you and Susan submitted comments and that worked, right?
Yes. What was interesting, though, we went to the Kingston public comment section and submitted comments there, and they never got put on the FERC website. And we've contacted them multiple times to ask them why our comments weren't on there, and have not gotten satisfactory answers yet. But the comments we made electronically did get put on the FERC website. So at least we're on once. So
Gabby, you were there, weren't you?
Yeah, I was there. And I'm not sure if they uploaded for the comments made at those meetings verbally, they upload them all as like one document that was, transcribed by a court reporter. So I think it looks like here, I can send you the link here to access that full document from the public scoping. They call them scoping sessions. So if you generate that PDF and if you still don't see your comment in there, let me know. But also would love to follow up about intervention and see what's going on with that.
okay, thank you. And we are the two that Nancy mentioned that were living in Michigan when the big oil spill happened, not far downstream from us, and it was pretty disastrous. And reading several up on Enbridge, their safety record and
Is
maintenance
abysmal.
record is just pathetic. So, yeah, we
Oh.
really don't like the idea that they're putting another one through. And currently our property is just probably 200 yards upstream of where they're putting a line across White Creek in Morgan County, which flows directly into Clear Creek at Barnett Bridge. And the old pipeline that went across, we went down and looked at it. And my understanding is they're supposed to put the stream bed back into the same configuration it was before they moved it. But there's a bunch of big rocks just thrown everywhere, and it's we're paddlers, and if they do that again, it could affect the stream, not only the ecological part of the stream, but the recreational part of the stream, make it more difficult to get through. So,
Well, and the previous pipeline was 4 inches. And was it 20? Oh, okay. I thought it was small. So, okay. Stand corrected.
but so, you know, we're concerned that they might not, and I understand they are going to do the dam option when they put it across. They're not going to dig underneath. So that's going to cause some sedimentation issues as well as other ones, I'm sure. But that's pretty much all we wanted to say.
Well, no, I
Sue will
mean,
say some more.
I've been sort of processing in my mind. We have spoken to Southern Environmental Law Center, and we are working with them. And one of the things they told us is that we need to keep a common message. And I think that in some ways it all boils down. We were never shown the solar aspect option of this plan. And all that has been shown our communities is this gas pipeline. It was, you know, if it was even possibly mentioned, it was thrown out the window. The renewables were thrown out the window. And it just feels like that if we don't do as hot as our summers are being and our storms as strong as they are and everything else, we have got to get keep fossil fuels in the ground. And it's very disturbing to see that TVA, which is partially government owned, is just disregarding anything the EPA says, disregarding anything, and not even giving us an option for something better than gas.
Gabby or Amanda, did you see the question from Sean Stallings? And I just want to make sure you saw it, but I also wanted to say something about Susan's experience, Susan and Keith's experience at the public hearings, which aren't. In other words, being ushered into a room that of a court reporter feels intimidating. One of our board members said, you know, this setting of public hearings, it intimidates a lot of people, and people aren't going to show up anymore. And so then TVA and other folks are going to say, well, nobody cares because nobody's showing up. So it really becomes even more and more important to push through that and show up at these things. And I hope that there's other actions that we all can take when those types of actions seem to fail.
Gabby, do you want me to address Sean's question? Nancy, your comments are a great segue actually, because so I don't know if everybody has access to the chat, but Sean asked, are any state agencies involved, and does the state environmental agency have a position on this? So Sean, great question. TDEC, our state environmental agency, does have a role in permitting for both the plant and the pipeline. For the pipeline, the primary state environmental permit that ETNG needs is it's called an aquatic resource alteration permit that also functions as a Section 401 certification under the Federal Clean Water Act. So there will be a comment period on that draft permit when it is released. It has not been released yet. The Army Corps actually just put out the application, the 404 application for public comment, and that comment period has closed. But it's kind of similar issues about the water impacts. So for people who paddle, who are concerned about the impacts on rivers and streams, this state ARAP and 401 certification will be a great opportunity to have your voice heard when that permit application, or sorry, when that draft permit comes out for public comment. I know we're focused on the pipeline today, but I also just wanted to mention that there's that TDEC, well, first of all, some pipeline projects have compressor stations that require air permits. That is not going to be the case as far as we understand with this pipeline, because Enbridge and ETNG decided to do an electric compressor station. So there aren't the same sorts of air emissions impacts. And then, but on the plant side, there has been an air permit that was out for public comment, and we're SELC prepared comments on behalf of App Voices and Sierra Club and some other groups, and so we're kind of waiting to see what happens on that. We think they should have done a major source permit, air permit, but they didn't. So far, TVA is claiming they don't need a major source permit for that. So, and then there's also a water permit for the plant, an ARAP for the plant. So, but I would say the biggest on the pipeline side, the ARAP/401 certification is going to be an opportunity to engage with TDEC. And I believe you can request a public hearing on that permit. So that might be something that folks who are involved with Tennessee Citizens for Wilderness Planning want to do.
Amanda, how do we become aware of this 401 certification process when it begins? I feel like I miss things.
You can, so there is already a permit file, I believe, open for the 401 certificate, or for the ARAP process, Nancy, and I don't have it at my fingertips, but I'm happy to follow up with you, because you can email, I think it's water permits. There's an email address for TDEC's water permits, and just ask to be added to the notification list for that.
Oh, okay.
For that permit.
Okay. And you think we can request a public hearing?
Yes.
And do you think those public hearings would actually be public hearings?
So when TDEC does the way TDEC generally runs a public hearing or public comment session for ARAP permits is like they will do a presentation, and then they will have a Q&A, which is not a formal, they don't record those as comments on the permit, and then they will start the formal public comment, and then people can give like verbal public comment in that second part of the meeting.
That
So
sounds a
that's
lot better.
typically how they run it.
That's good to know. So basically, the idea is to keep attacking this on any way we can think of doing it.
Yeah, and I'll add that I think a lot of pipeline fights are won, when permits end up being revoked or they can't get all their permits, and so there are lots of different ways and points of intervention that we can pursue. And if any one of these legs falls, then they don't have everything they need to build it. And I know we've oh my gosh, been sort of touching on some heavy things, but I do want to uplift that, pipeline fights are being won around the nation. There's successful examples all over the place, including right here in Tennessee. A few years ago, the Byhalia oil pipeline was defeated by a Black-led group in Memphis called Memphis Community Against Pollution. The Atlantic Coast Pipeline is also one sort of near us. And so there's a lot of great examples to look to here. And I guess there is local resistance to Ridgeline. I work really closely with a group called Sage Tennessee that's mostly based in Putnam and Jackson counties, but they've been fighting this thing since they learned about it. And there's also groups, all over the Cleanup TVA Coalition, which Appalachian Voices is a part of. Is composed of a whole coalition of different groups fighting the gas build out on a bunch of different fronts. So I just wanted to make sure that we uplifted some of the resistance and some of the wins as well. But I'll stop sharing again. What other questions do folks have? How are y'all feeling about this? I know TCWP has, really, saved the Obed from being turned into a reservoir, which is incredible. Like, how are y'all feeling about all this information? Would love to hear from some more folks.
I just want to say thank you for the link to the map, because I've been very curious about the exact route. And so I've just been sitting here following along. I went to the, I guess it was the Enbridge site, and they have like a flyover that you can take where you're, I don't know, like you're in a plane or something flying over the route, but it doesn't really have much detail. So yeah, so thank you for that. I'm not sure if I'm actually a member of TCWP, but I'm on the mailing list and I would like to join. My mom lives in Gobi, so across 27 from Lansing, and I worry about their neighbors. It's a really low income area, and obviously the park and the waters, and so thank you for all the information.
I'm going to put this. No, did I put this in yet? Yes, up at top. Yeah, there's our website there, Kathy, tcwp.org, and you can just hit join on there. That doesn't look like the same one. Huh.
I think I can find it from the emails too.
Okay, good. Well, we'd love to have you.
Thank you.
The more folks, in fact, right now, I just have been sending out some information in the upcoming newsletter, as well as I think we're putting it on the website, possibly, about how people can help with these kinds of things. We need lots of voices, lots of people, strength in numbers. There's research to be done even, so like Amanda, this is a good question for you. So the EPA told TVA on that Kingston plant, I guess, that they messed it up. They didn't do right. I mean, the EIS was very flawed. And TVA claimed they were willing to talk with the EPA again. They never did. And then my understanding is the EPA did not then follow up with the Environmental Quality Council, I guess it is. Like that's a step they're supposed to take. Is there something, is that true? And is there something we can do about that?
I think you named the primary thing that we can do about it, Nancy, which is build people power, because I think, especially right now with the election coming up, I think that the current administration has kind of gone as far as they're willing to go on taking a stand against TVA, unless they feel more political pressure to take action. So I think building people power, having more voices, kind of objecting to objecting to TVA investing in new gas plants at this, critical moment in the climate crisis is really important. I mean, we are obviously also evaluating legal action against TVA. We already have 8 lawsuits against TVA, or not against TVA, about the TVA gas build out, including, I was mentioning the 401 certification earlier. We have litigation pending against TDEC over their 401 certification for the Cumberland pipeline in Middle Tennessee, and we represent Appalachian Voices and Sierra Club in that case. So there are, there are legal avenues that we're exploring, but also and following up on. But I think that the really a big piece of moving the needle is also the advocacy on the ground of, just building more opposition. And I would say toward that end, the engaging in this FERC comment process is great. I think it's also, to the extent folks are interested in getting more engaged on opposing the gas plant as well, engaging with your local power company, which I don't know where y'all are. If you're in Knoxville, that would be the Knoxville Utilities Board. But that's another option, just to make your voice heard, that you as a customer of KUB don't want investments in new gas to be part of the picture. Same thing with the city government, that we're really looking for allies across the TVA service territory. And just to give an example, the Nashville Electric Service Board passed a resolution basically calling on TVA to do a better job of looking at solar and storage as an alternative. Our Nashville Metro Council and the mayor's office made similar comments on the gas plant. And I believe, I can't remember if any of them have commented in the FERC docket yet, but so there are lots of ways to advocate and build power locally, with folks who maybe and have relationships with and are easier to influence, and that has a kind of cascading effect and helps to just raise the visibility of the overall fight.
Jerry mentioned the North Dakota protests, and I remember because I lived in South Dakota for 25 years, and I watched that pretty carefully, and it brought back memories of the old days when people used to physically go out and protest and stand their ground. And I liked seeing that reminder by Jerry there that it did get that project canceled, I believe. It was the massive protest. And do we eventually have to do something like that? Take to the streets again.
I have a question about, so where is the gas coming from? Are they drawing, because I mean, where we live in Morgan County, they do have gas deposits. As a matter of fact, our neighbor has a derrick right on our, he's oil, isn't he? He's oil, but he also has gas. So, but are they getting it from, is it Truesdale County? Is that where it is? And it's being shipped to Kingston?
No.
Where is the gas coming from?
So our understanding, Susan, is that the gas is largely going to be coming from the Marcellus Shale.
In Pennsylvania?
Remember,
Yeah.
the East Tennessee gas pipeline is a huge pipeline that runs, I think Nancy showed the,
Yes, yes.
so the main stem of the pipeline runs, you know, basically all the way along the eastern side of the country. So that's our understanding. I think there may be some Utica shale gas involved too, but yeah, so they're moving gas interstate, which is why FERC has jurisdiction over this pipeline.
Okay, all right. And so that would mean that there's not going to be a lot of jobs that are really going to be available in the state from this pipeline, as opposed to, say, solar.
Well, that's correct. Yeah, Enbridge says that there would be one permanent job created by this whole big pipeline. And I think no more than half of the temporary construction jobs would go to local residents. You know, they bring in a lot of workers for the construction, which I think is supposed to be 18 months max. So one permanent job. And then I actually have a slide that talks a bit about the gas plant too, because that's relevant here. Currently, the Kingston plant employs around 200 people, and the gas plant would likely employ something like 25 to 35. TVA has not released those numbers for Kingston, despite us asking. They released it for a similar gas plant proposal of about the same size. So that's where we get our numbers from. But yeah, they haven't really told the Kingston community, the workers know, but they haven't really told the Kingston community that this gas plant would have, you know, a little more than 10% of the jobs that the coal plant offers. But we did a study, Appalachian Voices did a study a couple of years ago that found that a clean energy replacement for this other plant that I mentioned, where they want to do the same thing, basically, clean energy would create 20 to 30 times more permanent jobs than gas. And there's a full study here if you want more details about that.
Just
Okay,
to
thank
circle
you.
back to Jerry's comment and Nancy's question about like the people power aspect of this. So if I'm remembering correctly, Keystone XL was actually canceled by executive order in the very early days of the Biden administration. But Nancy, to your point, and to what I was saying earlier, I mean, yes, there was a lot of legal, you know, there was a lot of litigation over that pipeline, and that was important. But equally important was the people power and the resistance on the ground of different communities coming together to oppose the pipeline. And that's when we talk about building people power and raising the visibility. That's kind of what we're talking about in terms of mobilizing folks to come together and help raise the visibility of this gas build out as something that is equally deserving of national attention and action by the Biden administration or any administration that is going to be, have TVA as part of the federal government. But the other, I guess, important piece of that to remember is just like when we're talking about the local power companies, your electricity providers are TVA's customers. So there's the sort of federal part, and then there's also the fact that they should be responsive to what their customers are asking for. And Nashville, Knoxville, some of their biggest customers have the cities they serve have climate goals and things like that need to be highlighted. I think Oak Ridge, are some of y'all based in Oak Ridge?
Well, our principal place of business is in Oak Ridge. I live in Strawberry Plains. My utility company is KUB. Isn't that Knoxville Utility something?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I like that idea a lot in terms of TCWP is really good at those calls to action. So I really like that idea because that's something relatively simple people could do is start bugging their own utility companies. Yeah, I like that.
Especially because they tend to have regular meetings that you can show up to or submit written comments for. I know Nashville Electric Service meets once a month, and it's like at 8 a.m. in the morning. So you can go and like give comment before you go to work, on your way to work, or and Memphis is the same way.
Wow.
Sorry, go ahead, Nancy. I put my email in the chat. I would love if folks want to brainstorm more about ways to take action or organize, or want support at all with organizing around your electric utilities. I would love to work with y'all on that. So please do reach out. And beyond that, really excellent way to engage. There's also, writing letters to the editor, like tabling at community events. I mean, really whatever your niche is, I almost guarantee there's a way that it can be applied to this work. So would love to talk with y'all about any ideas you have. And I also just wanted to plug that we'll be having a big rally in Nashville on September 21st in the afternoon. I don't think we have an RSVP yet, but it's going to be a free country music and other hip hop music, big concert and rally with some really powerful frontline speakers, and it's going to be great. So just wanted to save the date for that. I'll be sure to get TCWP more details when it's available.
Hey, Gabby, make sure I'm on your email list. Amanda, I have a question for you about making a small contribution on behalf of TCWP to you guys. You're not a member organization. I'm so used to hitting a join button, but there's no join button on. Yeah, so we need to find out how to do that.
So I think there is a place, there should be a button. I'm happy to talk with you offline about it too, Nancy, but I'm pretty sure there's a button on our website that just says support
Donate.
our work or donate or something like that. So if you want to do it online, that's great. I can also connect you with our development officer in Tennessee, but thank you. That's very lovely.
I worry about you guys being overwhelmed because not only am I aware of what you're doing in relation to this gas build out, I get your newsletters, so I see all the other lawsuits, but you do have a lot of great lawyers. That's lucky.
I am blessed to have some really amazing colleagues. Yes. And I'm also blessed to work in Tennessee with some of the most committed community advocates I've ever seen. So I really love working with App Voices and TCWP and all the groups that we work with across the state. So you guys, you definitely keep me going.
All right. Well, that's pretty good. Thank you, everybody, for being here. And if you want a copy of this recording, you probably want to email me because I may not remember to send it out otherwise. So just shoot me an email and I'll send you a copy of the recording.
Could we also in the chats get the link that Gabby mentioned for the map? Finding a good detailed map, because we've been trying to, we did find bits, but it was difficult. Is that it, Gabby? Thank you.
Yes, that one's not clickable, but that one is what it is, the link it takes you to.
Okay, thank you so much.
Yeah.
You see it? It's a lot. Hold on. Let's see.
All right, folks. Well, hopefully we'll keep the ball rolling and organize as much as we can. I'll be in touch with Gabby and the Sierra Club folks, and I'd like to see a day of a lot of people out there, you know, at least one day.
Descend on KUB.
Yeah, yeah.
And I don't remember who runs, I don't know who provides power for Oak Ridge, but same thing.
I gotta find that out. That would be real relevant. And what about Keith and Susan? You're pretty close to how close are you to the lily pad?
I'm surprised we're not there right now.
Okay,
It's not
well,
open today. Yes, we're very close to the lily pad.
About 7 or 8 miles.
Right.
okay, so whoever supplies power for you all, who supplies power for you?
Oh, Plateau Electric, I will say, probably 5 or 6 years ago in their little magazine they send out every month, they talked about how they just didn't see how solar was a viable option for us. No way, no how, or whatever. Now, they may have changed some, but I think that if we have enough people going to the meetings, maybe it would change their minds.
What's the name of the company?
Plateau Electric.
How do you spell it?
Plateau Electric.
Okay. Oh, Plateau.
Plateau, yes.
That makes sense. Okay.
Yes. So
Okay.
I was chatting with Jerry because she lives across the creek from us, and we are going to attend the meeting and take some people who are concerned along with us. So we will start with that process and see if we can get them to encourage them to use more solar, because it is amazing. We have so many fields out here, and most of them are pasture for cows, or they're hay, you know, they cut them for hay. But there's lots of available land that solar could be put on.
Yeah, and there's a lot of great opportunities. Of course, the local power companies can take advantage of this. If you all know farmers who would want to take advantage of things like the Rural Energy for America program called REAP, really great like financial incentives out there right now for farmers and small businesses who want to go solar or do other clean energy projects. So also would love to chat more about that, Keith and Sue, if you.
Okay.
would like.
Yes.
I was just going to add that there's Plateau Electric, but also Plateau Utilities, which is a different company, and that's the water. So
That's right.
Plateau Electric. And then Oak Ridge, I think, would be ORUD, Oak Ridge Utility Department, I think. We have a good city council member, Ellen Smith, who might be.
Oh, she's a partner. I mean, she's on the A4 board, and I go to those meetings every month, and Ellen and I are in the same Blue Way group, and she's amazing. You're right. She's a good resource. Yeah. Oh, that's a good idea too.
And I mentioned Oak Ridge because think that they have a municipal climate goal of some sort. I seem to
Okay.
remember that. Might be worth asking Ellen about. She would probably know.
Okay. Okay.
But for folks, for the Plateau Electric, one just thing, sorry, I know we're trying to wrap up the meeting, but I can't help bringing this up, and then then Nancy, we should probably wrap things up, but the local power companies, most of them have signed contracts with TVA that allow them to provide or purchase power from a source other than TVA up to 5% of the electricity. And so some local power companies are using that 5% to invest in solar. So Susan and Jerry, I just mentioned that as something that you can ask at the Plateau meeting. You know, have they signed a contract that would allow them, it's called the flexibility contract, that would allow them to take advantage of that 5% carve out, and they could do a solar project.
Amanda, we have several friends that have gone solar, and one of them had to do a lot of fighting with Plateau Electric to be able to do the selling back of his extra energy for that. But yes, we do have a couple of friends who are solar, and one is still trying, I guess, to get Plateau Electric to do it, but
Yeah.
the other one managed to get it
And the
done.
amount they pay them back is nowhere near what they charge if they need the
Right.
power.
But anyhow,
Yeah,
we do make-
I know what you're talking about. This is a little bit different because it would be Plateau Electric actually investing in a solar farm or
Oh.
building their own solar farm. So
Okay,
it's good for them because it would likely save them money
gotcha.
on the amount of electricity that they would have to purchase from TVA. That's why I mentioned it, is like it changes the incentive for them a little bit. So
So
just
it's
something to
5%, they
ask
get
about.
5% if they go solar or do, or 5% for a solar farm of something.
Yeah, they can get 5% of their power from a non-TVA source.
Okay,
That's a really interesting piece of information.
yes.
And that's everywhere? That would be sure KUB and
Not quite everywhere, but for most local power companies, I think there are 5 or 6 that haven't signed it, including Memphis is one that hasn't signed it. Unfortunately, local power companies had to agree to some pretty onerous contract terms that make it very difficult to leave TVA in order to get this flexibility provision.
man,
But since they have it, we might as well be encouraging them to make full use of it, especially if it like helps to, offset the need for more investment in new gas. And it would likely save customers, not just the local power company, but also their customers money, because they would be getting direct, solar power directly without having to like go through TVA's system and pay the rate that TVA charges local power companies. So it's a good, it's a good opportunity, especially to get some of the local power companies familiar with doing solar, and just, integrating it into their system.
so that sounds like a great question, Susan and Keith, that you can ask when you go to that meeting. Okay. All right, should we sign off for the night and hope to get back together with hundreds of other people? All right.
Sounds great. It just takes a few to start.
Exactly.
So
Thanks
thank
for
you.
coming though, Amanda. We really appreciate that you took the time.
Absolutely. Glad to see you all.
Baby steps, as Jerry, that's right. All right, well, thank you, guys. Good night.
Thank you.
Thanks all.